U.S. President Donald Trump says he is close to a, quote, very good deal with Iran, but he's in no hurry to reach an agreement. Axios and the New York Times are reporting that the U.S. president is asking for several amendments to the latest peace proposal, insisting on tougher terms. On Friday, Trump held nearly 2 hours of high-level consultations at the White House. That was the latest discussion of a potential deal that would extend the ceasefire with Iran.
I would rather get a deal because we can open the strait immediately upon signing. The one guarantee that I have to have is that there will be no nuclear weapons. They've agreed to that. And it was very interesting. They originally said, we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, well, what happens if you buy a nuclear weapon? So now it says we will not develop or in any way purchase a military weapon. That's a big difference. So we're getting what we want slowly. Very tough negotiators. It takes a long time. I'm in no hurry.
Heidi Jo Castro has more on Trump's comments from Washington, D.C.
Still not much has changed, despite his multiple assurances that a deal is just around the corner. Although U.S. media is reporting that Trump has requested harsher terms to this potential memorandum of understanding, that his envoys deliver those to their Iranian counterparts. What exactly those changes are, we're not sure of, but he has voiced dissatisfaction with elements regarding the unfreezing of Iranian assets. And so those negotiations continue. We did see Trump speaking to the press yesterday, in fact, being interviewed by his daughter-in-law on Fox News. And he said that if the U.S. does not receive a deal from Iran, that it could finish things off militarily. He then again repeated his claim that the U.S. has already won militarily, but said that the U.S. military deliberately left some of the Iranian military infrastructure intact because the Iranian military is considered moderate, or portions of it is. And he also said that the U.S. shouldn't have been in Iran, which was a little bit confusing given that he was the one who ordered the U.S. military to start this conflict, which has, of course, divided his base, raised gas prices around the world, including here in the U.S., and also brought him some very unfavorable approval numbers in the U.S.
Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister says negotiations with the U.S. are continuing.
The exchange of messages with the United States is ongoing, and as long as the talks have not reached a clear outcome, it is not possible to judge them. Everything being said at this stage is merely speculation and should not be given significance.
And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Adam Clemens, a former Pentagon official and a former U.S. defense attaché at the American embassies in Jordan and Yemen. Thank you so much, Adam, again, for joining us here on the program. Do you agree with Trump's statement that the U.S. has already won militarily? Because I was looking at the Military Academy West Point's website. Winning militarily means achieving a political goal by getting the enemy to yield to your will, by breaking the enemy's both physical capacity and also psychological will to fight. Do you think that Trump has actually achieved that?
Thank you, Per, for having me. I think that you're right to question the differences here between reality and then the perception, or at least the stated, the political language, let's say, that we're reading from President Trump's interview with Fox News and his daughter-in-law. So I think that's the key difference here. You're right that this is also an intelligence question that the U.S. military, as well as the U.S. intelligence community, should be using to help inform President Trump, inform the Pentagon, and help inform U.S. Central Command, who is in charge of overall this military operation. So I don't discount what you're saying, and it's not. I don't think President Trump is very often stuck with the letter of the law or the letter of these definitions, these military definitions that certainly I've grown up with in my career in the military.
Sure. And I want to keep on this definition because Donald Trump said in his Truth Social post on Friday that there wouldn't be any money exchanged until further notice. But could he actually risk alienating the Iranian public by this and possibly then enforcing that psychological will of the Iranians to fight the U.S.?
Well, I'm not sure there's much else that President Trump could do that's going to necessarily alienate the Iranian people more or less. I think one of the risks here of this conflict, this direct Iran-U.S. conflict or involving Israel, has been that any supporters of the low level of support that the Iranian regime has, it has the effect of that they rally around the flag effect, where you have people that are on the sidelines, neutral, or are angered at they're not supporters of the regime, yet they rally around the flag in this face of U.S. military force. I certainly do think, though, that whatever economic resolution, or if there is further economic pressure, I think there's doubt that the normal Iranian citizen would benefit from that, that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, even before this, have been very deeply ingrained in the Iranian economy, in sidelining sanctions, and no doubt will be leading and trying to find ways around the current sanctions and the current U.S. military blockade.
Adam, what about the other side then of this, the other part to that definition on the military side? What capacity does Iran have at this point to launch missiles? I mean, could you tell if they've been able to dig out their arsenal and rebuild their launchers, getting ready for another round of war, possibly?
Well, Bear, I think you're stating there are certainly limitations of a air campaign only, and I think that that this is showing that certainly the U.S. Campaign probably disrupted, no doubt disrupted some of its missile capabilities, its drone capabilities, and targeting some of its leadership along with the Israeli attacks. But I think what you're suggesting here, of course, Iran would be hardening some of its defenses. It's no doubt since, especially last summer of that short conflict, that Iran would hide or at least reserve some of these missiles to live and fight another day. So I don't think this should really come to any surprise, unfortunately. And I think that this is just another example of that Iran still has survived for another day. It's going to continue to cause chaos. But in the long term, this is a long-term gain that I think Gulf states recognize, that has to be able to survive, that even South Asian states or Far East Asian states that haven't been directly involved, they're still indirectly involved because of the economic impacts. And I think that collectively, those are all considerations, in addition just the pure military terms of what you described of how we approach the coming weeks.
Adam, you're a military guy. How well do you think that the so-called Dawn Road doctrine, as Trump calls it himself, is a successful way of waging war on an adversary that's waging an asymmetrical warfare like Iran is?
Well, certainly, I think that the Trump administration's the quick strikes, or the quick seizing of Maduro in Venezuela and some of its other actions, I think that was this is a totally different game, totally different context, totally different adversary. I think it's right to suggest that there may be some overreach, without a doubt. I think the thing that's so much different here compared to previous administrations is that the administration is wanting to go U.S. alone, has not brought in traditional U.S. partners and allies, or trying to diplomatically, militarily, economically. And I think that's the very different context or different way here in which this administration goes about trying to conduct business. So it's very ironic, after this happened, after this war of choice, that the Trump administration tried to bring in other partners and allies to try to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. And so I think after this administration is over, that's one thing that I would expect the U.S. to get back to doing, that it's always traditionally done. And that's something, I think, a big gap in the Trump approach, because that's what made even the past Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the economic sanctions that accompanied it strong, was because it was internationalized.
Adam Clements, so good to have you on the program and hear your analysis on these questions. Thank you so much for joining us.